Hi there, and welcome back to this class. Now, in this class, we'll do the very last of our array of sliding door blueprints. Now, we've done a simple opening blueprint, haven't we, here at the beginning? We learned the node which we use, which was set relative location. Then we made a double sliding door, which slides both sides of the doors. And from this blueprint, we created this one here. And we only added get location to set that up. So that helped us with the initial position for this door to open. So now to finish, we'll make a 3-door blueprint. Okay. Now with the principles that we've learned so far, we'll put them all into practice, and we can make as many doors really as we would like following what we've learned so far. If you want 3, 4 or more, it makes no difference really. The same principle applies. We just obviously increase the nodes in the blueprint. Now I've already imported a mesh that we can use, which we can see here, which is the aluminium frame and the glass sliding doors. Now the doorway is already here, the door frame. I decided to add it from an external source so that we could use as our blueprint. And here is the blueprint itself with the 3 doors. Okay, so the door frame's outside, and inside we have the 3 doors themselves. So I brought this forward a little bit, basically because what I've done is what we did in the previous videos. So I've already done most of the copying over of the blueprint, but let me just show you what it's looking like. This, whilst it loads up, just to explain, it all comes from the simple sliding door blueprint that I've just duplicated, renamed, and made a couple of changes. But let's have a look at how it's all set up. So I've added the static meshes. We learned how to do that before, didn't we? The static mesh we've got in here for the aluminium and the glass sliding doors. And I've got 2 meshes here. I'll just show you them. One of them is for a corner door and one's for the middle. So what's the difference between them? Well, actually, it's that one of them has a lock here and the other one doesn't. So this is how they're all set up. So we've added them in here. In the components list, I've added an arrow for the left side door, which is the reference for this door and the mesh, and they're all connected as we showed you before in the hierarchy. We've got an arrow for the right hand door, and we have an arrow for the middle door. So then it makes no difference really if you place them here or there. But there's also, remember, our well-known box collision. So I've added one on the left so that when the character approaches, the idea is that this door will open up and then the other will open too. So there's it leaves this gap. And there's the left collision box so that when the character comes in and moves over to that side, the principle or the idea is that they will open as well. So we have 2 meshes that will move simultaneously with the same motion. Okay, it's pretty simple. It's just an extra concept for me to show you now. So if you want to use several doors, like let's say 5, for instance, well then you'll have 2 on the ends and 3 in the middle. The logic will always be the same. Okay, right. So the components part is already done. That's all nicely set up. Now we have to go to the event graph, and I didn't change anything in the blueprint itself. Here I have that blueprint for the sample sliding door. Okay, so that's the same. Now let's have a look at basically how this is all set up before we move on. So we have the collision box event here on the left hand side. So when the character gets to the box area, when they overlap it, it's going to activate the timeline next here. Okay, and we have in the timeline this curve, don't we, which goes from 0 to 1 in terms of seconds. And then we also will get these distances here, the values that multiply by this variable, and that's called the opening distance. Right. then from that point, there will be a set relative location node, and its target is the arrow for the left side door, which is this one right here. And then we'll add the variation on the x-axis, which is the axis that's going to move the door from one side to another. So that's the key thing, making sure it's the right axis. For this first door, though, the arrow is placed at 0, 0, 0 in the world, so we don't really need to worry about that position. So that's fine. The relative position, because it will begin from 0, 0, we won't have any problems with it. It will be fine. We can just push play, so we can see that it's already working. Okay, so it will slide just a little bit for that distance that I've left open. Okay, so we just rename the variable if we needed to for the open distance left. And this is the variable for the left door distance. Okay, so here we can increase this to 1.5. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's enough. So this door is around 3 meters wide. Actually, no, it's wider, isn't it? Let me set it to 2.7. So it's going to slide almost all the way to the end. Maybe a little more. Let's say 2.85. So this distance will depend on the size of your door. Okay, obviously. Perfect. So and our left door has slid all the way over there. So it's perfect, right? So what else? Well, now we have to make this middle door open, don't we? So how do we do that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Let's take a look at what we have to do. Okay, so we will add the middle door information to this line here, this stream of code. Since I'm in this stream, I'll keep on using it. I want everything to be executed at the same time within the timeline. So what I'll do is I'll copy this node, set relative location, and I'll link it here. And here it's going to execute this function and also so execute this function and also this function. Now, what's the target? Well, the target is going to be the right middle door, isn't it? So we'll get that. And we plug it in. Great, so that's all connected now. What's the next step? Well, now we need to work out our time variation. So what's our time variation? Well, that is all to do with the door movement. Let's think about this. So we want it to move at the same time. So it's sliding in the right order. And we need to just adjust the distance, don't we? Right. So with that, we can assume that the timeline is going to be the same. So from a time of 0 to 2 seconds, the door will move position. Okay. And the door's going to move over to the end, but it's got a shorter distance. So with the time span being the same, it's the distance that's going to adjust. So unless we want to move it quickly or slowly, then we will change other things. But hopefully you get the idea. So I'm going to use this information we already have. We don't need to create another timeline. So I have this timing information, and now just make that a bit bigger. Okay. So I can reuse that. So let's see what's the best way to start. Okay. So let's bring this out here. I'll use this. And then we'll use the same node and we'll multiply it. I multiply it by a variable. So I can't use this variable because it has a larger distance. We have to use a different one. We'll call it opening distance middle. And I'll set it as a float and compile so it appears in our details panel. And I'll set the value to 100. Great. And then we'd be able to put it in here to get. Okay, and plug that in to the multiply. And here I'll make it visible so we can edit it outside of the blueprint. Great. So I change this and the category and just rename it. Let's name it door movement. And here I'll select the same category as well. So that means that both of them will be under the same category, okay? Makes it a little easier and nicer on the eye. If I come here, I have the two variables here under door movement, right? Left and middle. All right, cool. So now we need to add the distance here. So let's do that now. Just drag that into there and let's see. Okay, do you see it? It's the same. Yeah, it's the same problem as we had previously. So it slid on the 0, 0 axis. It used the X distance and the Y and the Z are at 0. So it's mixed up a little bit. So let's do something here. What we learned in the other class, we need to do. So we'll get this reference, which is the relative reference to this door panel. And then we need to do the math. Remember? So we'll sum it up to this other variable here. It's as we saw in the previous class, just the same. I'll do it again though, so we can review it. So we need to get an event begin play. In other words, right at the beginning of the game, we need to pull in this variable. Where is it? Let's get the variable. I can get it here, but it also can be got from up the top here. Okay, works just the same. But for our middle door arrow, I'll need its relative position to get relative location. All right, so it's already working here. That's nice. So I need to store this in a variable. Let me show you a new way though to do that. Last time we did it when we created a variable. If you remember, we created a variable last time. And then we added it here. Now we've set it and added it this way. There is another way, a quicker way to do it. And let me show you how to do that. And you might find it quite useful to do it this way. So you mouse over the pin, okay? And right click and select promote to variable. And there you go. It creates a set type variable for us. And it names it after the pin as well. So it's quite handy to do it that way. It's created that link for us too. So it's already here. Okay, and it's a vector type variable and it's got the same name. In this case, we can use this name. It doesn't make any difference really in Unreal because we're the ones who need to know the reference, right? But I'll name it middle initial just to help us. So it's the middle door initial position. Okay, and we'll plug that in. So now we've stored that information. So when I push play, it will store this relative position in this variable. And here, let me just disconnect this. Doesn't make sense, does it? I'll get that from here. Okay, so the variable we've just created, we put here. And then I'll then sum them up. So to do that, I'll drag out from here, okay, to the information I have here. There we go. Let me just switch that position. Okay, right. But here it won't be linked. It may link it, but it won't get it. So I need to transform this, transform the values here. So we got 3 vectors. So do you remember how we did that? So what we do here is we pull out. And so we'll create a make vector to create a vector, right? And there's now this output that we can use. It goes into X from there. And then out of the return value, we can pull in here and it will sum them up. And then I need to place it here. So I need to recombine the pins and set its vector pin to the new location. Okay. So that should be all good. So let me just pull these down a little bit just to organize it visually so it's a little bit neater. And then let's comment over this section here. So let's bring that here. Drag over them, press C to comment. And we can call this left door. And here we have the middle door. There we go. Nice. No, keeping it nice and tidy, okay? We like to keep things tidy. Now it's up to you now how you organize this or how organized you want to be. It doesn't make any difference in terms of programming, but we just like to keep things neat so they're easier to understand. Now, I think I'll comment on this too, just so it makes more sense. Get initial location middle door. I think that would be a good name. Location middle door. Okay, if you want to, you can comment this. It's not completely necessary, but you can if you want to. I think this is enough though for us. So let's compile and then save. Let's see what happens. Let's walk up to it. Okay, there it is. So they're opened simultaneously. Let me stand a bit further back. Okay, and go up to it. Do you see it? So it opened at the same time as the left-hand side door. It just moves slower, doesn't it? Because of the amount of time being the same, but the distance being shorter. So it moves slower. What we need to do now is fix the distance, okay? It's currently at 285. Let's try 140. Practically half now, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. That's it. You can notice now the difference, can't you? That's much better. So because we already used the previous blueprint, we reused it, reusing the one we already had with the end overlap in reverse in our programming. It's working really nicely. So we go into the box, it activates it, and it makes this happen. Notice the flow of the programming, and then the second node is coming into play nicely as well. Very nice. So what else can we do? Well, for example, what if we wanted to adjust the timing here? Now, I don't even need to create a new timeline. If that's what I wanted to do, if it's the timing I'm adjusting, I can just do it this way. Let's do this really quick so we can get to know all the possibilities. So let's see, time of 2 and value of 1. But I want it to restart. So I don't want to start all over again. I want it to start at 1 second, for example. Okay. So it could be at any position. It will hold still from 0 to 1, and then it moves. So this may be an option for you if you wanted to do something slightly different. Let me just organize this so we can make the curve. There we go. Just showing you a variation here. Instead of getting out of the curve, I'm going to get it from the second node. Okay. And there we go. Put that there. And this is from 0 to 2. And this one has a short break. So let's see if it worked. You see that? So yes, it does look kind of off, but we might just have to calibrate it and move the other one to start sliding. So, but it's an option for you. So maybe we can reduce this a little. Let's try. Because I think it's taking too long to begin. So try 0.75. And let's see if 0.75 looks good. Let's see. Oh, do you see that? Almost there. It's almost, like it's almost connecting with the next door and then moving all of them together. So it almost reaches the middle and then starts moving at the same time. It's just a case of the fine adjustments, maybe 0.85. Let's have a look. Okay, so maybe it needs to be different, slightly different. Maybe we went too far there. But you can see the idea, can't you? You can work with the animation just to fine tune it so that it fits the concept that you're trying to achieve. Now, we don't need to focus on this too much because the goal is to understand the concept, isn't it? It's up to you, of course, to fine tune it how you need it to be. So we can do it this way, or the other way is it's up to you really. But it certainly looks better doing it the way we showed you. So you know, having to start from scratch and delete things, start again. Hopefully that's all made sense to you. Cool. So we have the sliding door from here to here. And now we have to do the opposite. We have to open when the character goes from here to the other side. So let's do this now. I'll add a comment and we'll put that comment here over that section. We'll call it overlap left door. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll create the overlapping events on the right collision box or door. Okay, you'll be familiar with this, so we can do it quite quickly. It's basically all the steps that we've gone through so far. And here I can just copy all of this. Control W does the copy. There we go. And then we can link them together. That's it, the play in the reverse. Good. And the same thing, really. The only difference is, what's the difference? Let's just work this out. See if you can spot it. What is the difference? Well, here, the difference is the variable, yeah, the distance. So the distance here will have to be negative. Let's take a look. Let's just be sure. Okay, so it won't be negative actually because the vector's pointing here. Okay, so it's a good job we checked that. So let's do it now and see how it goes. It might be easier doing it this way. So let's just double check. Right, so this vector is out of the axis. If we do it exactly as it is here, what's going to happen? We might have that problem where it's slipping to 0 before the motion begins, or like jump into position 0. So we need to create a variable with the relative position for the right door arrow. So just as we did before, but specifically for the right door arrow. So we can delete this one and we use that one. So we'll move the right door now. So we need to create a variable with the initial position. So we're just following this flow here, right? So all I can do now is make sure this is for both. And I'll create the right door variable. And I need to get relative location and promote to variable. And then I'll rename it right initial, which is our initial position for the right door, or the door on the right hand side. And I'll drop that into there. Cool. And then I can copy these nodes because they're basically the same thing that we're doing. There we go. Instead of linking it here, I think there we go. I'll link it here, right? So put it into there. Let me just drag this down a little bit so it's easier to see. It'll fit in nicely then, won't it? Select that and pull over here. Cool. So here we'll have a variable for the right hand door distance. And I'll set the same distance as the left-hand door. And let's do a test. We'll use the same variable because the distance will be practically the same. Maybe the direction will change. I doubt it though. The distance will be the same. Let's test this. And let me just combine the structure pin. Place it there. Cool. Okay. So now we've all set this up correctly. It should be linked up properly. But we'll check this part. Let's compile and save. Let's overlap the right-hand door. Let's go over here. Okay. So that's gone wrong, hasn't it? Now, I wasn't sure if it took the vector position into account. And let's just check. So it takes a blueprint relative position, which is good. So we learned something new there. I wasn't quite sure, and I didn't remember if it worked like this or another way. So now we can test it and find out. So there are two things we can do here. Let me show you what they are. So we can create a brand new variable with the right distance and the same value. That's one option. The difference between one value and the other, what is it though? Well, from here to here, this value is positive. From here to here, it's negative. So it's the other way round. So there's a hint we can use to save variables, which is a good idea at times, which is multiplying this value by -1. So instead of creating a variable, I can just reverse its sign. Okay. So it will get our variable, which is at 285, and multiply it by -1 285 times. Equals -285, right? So let's see if this will work. Okay, you see that? So it's slid in reverse now. So there's a tip that I can offer you, is to save the variables as we go. So instead of having a new one, it would work the same. If I want to create a new variable, it won't make any difference really, but I'll have to add 3 values, which will be exactly the same value as it is in here because the door is the same size. So we can just reuse things, right? And rename them to whatever's appropriate. So I'll call this one opening distance corner. I'm not sure I like this name, but never mind. We'll go with it just to identify the corner doors. We'll make a vector. Perfect. Here. Following this logic. So we've made the vector. Now let's see the middle door. The middle door is sliding to the right. So that's positive. And we can use the same logic that we use down here and multiply this value by -1. Use multiply -1, and then we want to link it here. Cool. And I use the same value we had here, but in reverse. Okay. Let's see. Perfect. If I go to the other side, the same thing happens, right? Now the other door, look at that, beautiful. So then we can go in and out and it behaves just as it should from either side. Cool. So let's see what else we can do here. We'll comment this to start with though, just so it looks a bit tidier, more organized. And we'll call this right door. And then on this section, we'll comment this. And we'll call this one middle door. But this needs to be middle door 02, doesn't it? Because we've already got, yeah, there we go, middle 2. So this slides in reverse. Nice. And it's overlapping. Its overlap is the right door. So overlap right door. There we go. Cool. Nice. So this is it. Basically, this is it in terms of blueprints for opening doors. So then let's recap what we've looked at in this chapter. So in this chapter, we've learned how to work with simple doors. We've made a rotation variation. We've made it move, right? And it's this blueprint over here. So it opens as if it was embedded to a wall. And here we progressed, didn't we, to make a sliding door. And we've made both doors slide open independently. Okay, this one's still has some changes to be made for the opening to work in the middle. It's just a matter of inverting the sign. Let's do that real quick, actually, just so you can see how to do it. We need 65 and minus 65. And we could have used the -1 concept that we used recently, but that's fine. We can take just baby steps to improve. Don't worry about that. So here we go. We can. Oh, I got that the wrong way around, didn't I? So let's just change that around the other way. 65 there. Okay, so just deleted the print screen there. That's what was bringing up all the coordinates on the screen. So now we have a normal door sliding either side. Okay, they're inverted. So they slide like that. And the last blueprint that we made was this one that has 3 doors that you can use. Basically use the same logic as the previous doors we made, and we can approach from either side and they open up nicely like that. So what we can do is if we stop here, we can create one more door, like middle door 2. Everything would need to be duplicated. You need to add another arrow middle, and then we would have to get a relative location of it, and we would have to do this exactly, but with different variables. Only then you need a separate variable, okay? Because the distance would be different. And then you would have to create another variable, but in the end, it's all the same. You just have to adapt whatever needs adapting. But the blueprint structure is exactly the same, okay? So let's end this chapter then on the sliding doors. Hopefully you've learned quite a lot here, especially with the nodes, the details and the tips that we've been able to offer you. You'll be able to put them into practice. The tips about multiplication, we use this quite a lot in blueprints along with other mathematical details. So we've hopefully shown you some things that you'll be able to improve on as we progress. We've also created relative positions or initial positions too, and been able to reuse them, which we'll continue to use quite a lot in our blueprints. So there are some blueprints here that we'll create at this stage, but you'll revisit them in the future, okay? That will really help us to start creating some even more detailed and useful blueprints in ArcViz. Great. So that's it, everyone, and we'll see you in the next chapter.